Good people, I am come hither to die the death whereunto I am adjudged. Those are the first words of Anne Saunders' confession, printed in 1573 as part of a brief discourse of the late murder of Master George Saunders, written by Arthur Golding and printed by Henry Binman. Tudor England didn't have newspapers, but it did have cheap print that served the same purpose. Broadsides and pamphlets sold by street hawkers, filled with crime, scandal, and warnings about moral decay. Oh no. These printings were not neutral accounts. They didn't have journalistic standards of neutrality or anything like that. They mixed news with sermonizing and presented each story as a lesson wrapped in something sensational enough to sell quickly on the streets of London. If you wanted updates on shocking crimes, household betrayals, or grisly executions, this, my friend, was how you got your news. Welcome back to the YouTube channel for the Renaissance English History Podcast. I am Heather, and I am just doing a little audio mini cast today, just dropping in to share this fun story with you about Tudor newspapers and broadsheets. I've actually been wanting to do a full episode on Tudor newspapers, so I've been digging into it. Of course, the Tudors didn't have newspapers the way we know them, but they did have broadsheets on various things like true crime, and that is what we are going to talk about today. So crime pamphlets usually came as small quarto booklets or single-sheet broadsides, quickly printed on uneven paper and sold for a penny or less. Their popularity surged under Elizabeth I, when the London presses expanded and the appetite for true stories of vice and punishment grew. They covered real events, murder trials, confessions on the scaffold, and household tragedies framed as divine warnings. The Tudors loved true crime just like we do today. They always claimed to be true reports, in quotes, and the writers insisted that their purpose was moral instruction, even as they leaned into the lurid details that readers wanted. Printers and booksellers like Henry Binman, Thomas Orwin, John Kidd, and Edward White were behind many of the most widely circulated Tudor crime narratives. These pamphlets were often read aloud in taverns or carried from house to house, turning them into a kind of early true crime podcast that traveled by voice as much as by print. Let's talk about a few examples. First, the murder of George Saunders in 1573. One of the best documented Tudor crime pamphlets is a brief discourse on the late murder of Master George Saunders. George Saunders was a London merchant tailor whose murder was arranged by his wife Anne and her lover George Brown. The pamphlet lays out the plot in detail: secret meetings, arrangements made in taverns, hired accomplices, and a timeline tracing the events leading up to the killing. For Tudor print culture, this level of narrative structure is unusually clear. Anne is described as speaking most unnaturally about her husband as she helped to arrange his death. Brown was captured and executed, and the pamphlet notes that a gallows was set up at Smithfield for Anne Saunders, and Anne Drury, who were both executed on the 13th of May, 1573. The inclusion of the gallows makes the method explicit. They were hanged. The pamphlet prints Anne's confession in full, beginning with her acknowledgement that she had come to die the death. This case was sensational enough to be retold in 1599, 26 years later, in a play, A Warning for Fair Women, showing how these crime narratives made their way from printed pamphlet to theatrical entertainment. Number 2, let's talk about the murder of John Brewen in 1592. A second well-attested case appears in the 1592 pamphlet, The Truth of the Most Wicked and Secret Murdering of John Brewen, Goldsmith of London, printed by Thomas Orwin for John Kidd, and sold by Edward White at his London shop. The pamphlet tells the story of John Brewen, a London goldsmith, murdered in a conspiracy involving his estranged wife and her lover, of course. The pamphlet emphasizes the secrecy of the plot, the domestic tension leading up to the murder, and the discovery of the crime. It follows the full legal process, reporting the convictions and the execution details. Brewen's wife was burned. Her lover was hanged, both at Smithfield on the 28th of June, 1592. These punishments were consistent with English law, which treated a wife's murder of her husband as petty treason, a category that carried the penalty of burning. The pamphlet uses these details as a warning about the dangers of illicit relationships and household disorder. It also showed that crime pamphlets weren't just reporting events, they were actively shaping them into stories about moral collapse and divine justice. Now let's talk about witchcraft. By the 1590s, crime pamphlets often fused murder with accusations of witchcraft. A clear example appears in another 1592 pamphlet, whose long descriptive title begins, "A most wicked work of a wretched witch." Say that 10 times fast. A most wicked work of a wretched witch. A most wicked work of I can't do it. Can you? I'd love to know. It's actually cataloged today still in several university and research libraries and included in the witching.org database. It concerns an Essex woman accused of harming her husband, children, and livestock, with the pamphlet describing demonic involvement and poisoning. Pamphlets like this framed household tragedy as evidence of spiritual corruption, insisting that readers learn to recognize the signs of ungodliness all around them. These narratives weren't reporting from a neutral distance. They were actively guiding public fear and moral interpretation. Witchcraft pamphlets circulated rapidly, especially in counties where ecclesiastical courts and assize judges were already predisposed to see domestic misfortune through a supernatural lens. Taken together, these pamphlets show how crime stories circulated in Tudor England long before anything like newspapers existed. They transformed local tragedies into public events and offered readers a clear moral framework. A straying wife, an unfaithful servant, a disordered household, or a flirtation with the demonic was always presented as the first step towards catastrophe. The stories spread quickly. A printer could produce a few hundred copies in a day, and people passed them around, read them aloud, and retold them. They set the tone for how the public understood crime, morality, and justice in a period when official information moved slowly and rumor moved much faster. So, quick pause while we're talking about Tudor entertainment, such as it was. If you would like something a little more cheerful and festive than murderous spouses and conspiracy, I invite you to check out Yuletide with the Tudors, which is starting on December 1st. It's my digital advent calendar. It runs every day through 12th night with history, stories, music, and cozy seasonal extras. You can join at englandcast.com. There's a link right up in the top right, or I'll put a link down below as well. Now let's finish up about the pamphlets. So, crime pamphlets were the Tudor world's version of breaking news. They gave people the stories they wanted most: betrayals within marriages, household violence, lovers plotting in taverns, and witchcraft creeping into everyday life. Many of these pamphlets survived because collectors saved them. Countless more vanished. But the ones that we do have show a world eager for scandal and quick to interpret tragedy through the lens of sin and divine justice. Their final lines would often warn readers to learn from what they had just read. As one pamphlet ended, "Let all that hear beware by me." So there you go. A little bit on Tudor crime pamphlets. I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, go ahead and press that like button wherever you're listening to this. It helps to feed those algorithms and get our content to more people. And I hope that if I don't already have it, I earned your subscription to my channel where I put out content like this on the regular. You know, there's nothing more festive on a Thanksgiving weekend than a bit of true crime, right? I never got into true crime stuff. I have so many friends who are totally into it. And Hannah, my daughter, actually is really into true crime stuff too. So somehow that missed me. Maybe it skipped a generation. I don't know. Are you into true crime? I would love to know. Would you like more stories of true crime in Tudor England? Because I got a bunch of them. I would be happy to do more Tudor true crime if you would be into it. All right, my friend. Let me know how you're doing this Thanksgiving weekend. I hope that you are having a wonderful weekend if it's Thanksgiving where you are. I know many of you listen where it's not Thanksgiving this weekend, in which case I hope you're just having a fabulous regular weekend. All right, my friend, I will be back soon. Remember that you are deeply loved. I am so grateful that we share the planet with each other. you make the planet a better place. And especially on this weekend, this season of thanks, I am so grateful that we get to spend this time with each other talking about Tudor true crime. I'll be back very, very soon. Don't forget to drink your water. Bye-bye.